Ron Howard. You ever wonder what happens when the nicest guy in Hollywood finally loses his cool? Ron Howard, yeah, the red-headed kid from Mayberry, who grew up to be one of the most respected directors in the business, is famous for his calm, kind, and patient style. He's not the type to scream at actors, throw chairs across the set, or storm off when things go wrong. That's just not him. But here's the twist. Even Ron Howard has limits. And when actors crossed those lines, things got tense. For more than 50 years, Howard has built his career on collaboration and respect. He believes the best performances come when actors feel safe and supported, not pressured. But along the way, he's worked with stars who made that philosophy nearly impossible. Some were divas, some were unpredictable, and a few just clashed with his entire way of working. These weren't just small disagreements. They were conflicts that shaped the way Howard cast and directed for the rest of his career. Tonight, we're diving into 7 actors. Ron Howard reportedly could not stand working with the stars who pushed Hollywood's nicest director right up to his breaking point. Let's get into it. Shelley Long. Ron Howard's breakout as a studio director came with the 1982 comedy Night Shift. He was in his 20s, still finding his voice, and needed everything to go smoothly. Enter Shelley Long, who at the time was known but not yet the star she'd later become on Cheers. On paper, she was perfect for the role, smart, sharp, and funny. But once cameras rolled, the chemistry turned rocky. Unlike Michael Keaton, whose improvisation kept the set alive, Long was rigid. She wanted control over every detail. Crew members later recalled her stopping scenes to question blocking, debate rewrites, or challenge Howard's choices. Howard, who thrives on collaboration, found himself constantly adjusting to her demands instead of building the film organically. The tension came to a head when she delayed a major scene for hours, insisting on script changes. Ron never exploded. He's not that guy, but people on set noticed his quiet frustration. Shelley, for her part, defended herself years later, saying she simply came prepared, and some directors saw her questions as defiance. Either way, Howard walked away from Night Shift with a clear lesson. Actors who need control don't work well on his sets. Tom Sizemore. If Shelley Long was a test of patience, Tom Sizemore was a storm. By 1996, Howard was directing Ransom, a high-stakes thriller starring Mel Gibson and Rene Russo. Everything looked like a surefire hit until Sizemore showed up. Known for his gritty screen presence, he was also notorious off-camera for battles with addiction and unpredictable behavior. On Howard's set, that volatility showed up in full force. Reports say he'd arrive late, disoriented, and derail scenes with his erratic energy. Howard later admitted in an interview that he sometimes had to recalibrate everything around one person's unpredictability. That was his diplomatic way of saying Sizemore threw the whole rhythm off. The breaking point came during a key scene when his behavior got so disruptive, Howard had to shut production down. Unlike other collaborators he later praised or forgave, Howard never spoke publicly about Sizemore again, even when the actor passed in 2023. Sometimes, silence says everything. Andy Griffith. This one stings. Ron Howard practically grew up on The Andy Griffith Show. As little Opie Taylor, he was adored by audiences and by Griffith himself, at least at first. Howard has often credited Griffith with making him feel like a partner, not just a child prop. But as the years went on, Ron saw another side of his TV dad. Behind the wholesome image, Griffith could be moody, controlling, and even sharp with the cast. Aunt Bee's actress, Frances Bavier, famously disliked him. Don Knotts loved him but admitted he had a temper. By the later seasons, teenage Ron started asking more questions about his character and the show's direction. Griffith reportedly didn't like being challenged, even by Opie. Ron learned to read the room carefully and tread lightly around his mentor. When the show ended, the two drifted apart. They never reunited on projects, and their relationship stayed distant. Howard's tribute when Griffith died in 2012 was polite, but brief proof that the father-son bond on-screen didn't carry into real life. Russell Crowe. By the early 2000s, Ron Howard was established, steady, and respected. Enter Russell Crowe, a force of nature with an Oscar-winning reputation for intensity. They teamed up for A Beautiful Mind in 2001, and yes, the movie won Best Picture. But behind the accolades, Howard was fighting to keep his set balanced. Crowe treated every scene like combat. He debated camera setups, rewrites, even the philosophy behind character choices. Assistant directors later said Ron had to manage Russell's intensity just to keep the film moving. Howard described it this way: "With some actors, you guide the scene. With Russell, you hold on tight and hope for the best. That's both a compliment and a warning. Crowe, for his part, said he wasn't there to be liked. He was there to chase truth. The movie turned out brilliant, but Howard never cast him again. When asked years later, he said simply, "Some partnerships are meant to be once in a lifetime." Translation: never again. Henry Winkler. Here's a tricky one, because Ron Howard and Henry Winkler are still friends today. But during Happy Days in the 70 Seconds, things got complicated. Howard was supposed to be the star, as Richie Cunningham, the wholesome boy next door. Then, Winkler's Fonzie showed up, and suddenly the whole show revolved around him. Audiences loved the cool rebel in the leather jacket, and ratings followed. As the scripts shifted toward Fonzie, Howard felt himself fading into the background. He later admitted he resented not Henry personally, but how the show's narrative changed. For a young actor who was already dreaming of becoming a director, it was a tough lesson about how unpredictable show business can be. Mel Gibson. Howard worked with Mel Gibson on Ransom, and while the movie was a hit, the process wasn't easy. Gibson was at the height of his power, fresh off Braveheart, and came with strong opinions on everything. Crew members recalled him suggesting script changes, debating directorial choices, even weighing in on catering. Ron spent more time managing Gibson's input than steering the movie himself. Howard later put it diplomatically, "Some actors bring so much passion, it spills over into every aspect of production. That can be energizing or exhausting." With Gibson, it was both. Marlon Brando. And finally, the legend himself. In the mid-90 seconds, Ron Howard was offered the chance to direct Marlon Brando in a prestige drama. At first, it sounded like a dream. In reality, it was chaos. Brando was deep into his reputation for being difficult. He refused to learn lines, demanded cue cards, disappeared for hours, and pushed for constant rewrites. One crew member said he treated the set like his personal playground. The tipping point came when Brando stopped a simple dialogue scene, vanished for 3 hours, then returned, insisting he'd reconceived the character and wanted to start over. For Howard, organized, respectful, and disciplined, it was unbearable. The project collapsed, and he never worked with Brando again. Howard later summed it up perfectly. "Some legends earn their reputation through their work. Others earn it through their behavior. That says it all." So there you have it. Shelley Long's control issues, Tom Sizemore's chaos, Andy Griffith's hidden temper, Russell Crowe's intensity, Henry Winkler's overshadowing stardom, Mel Gibson's overwhelming passion, and Marlon Brando's legendary unprofessionalism. Each one tested Ron Howard's patience in ways that shaped how he ran his sets for the rest of his career. The funny thing is, Howard never made it personal. For him, it was always about professionalism, about making sure the environment on set was one where people could do their best work. Still, it's proof that even the calmest, nicest guy in Hollywood has a limit. So now, I've got to ask you, which one of these stories surprised you the most? Do you think Ron Howard was too demanding, or were these actors simply impossible to deal with? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into Hollywood drama, make sure you hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.